was going to bed. I seemed to be tired, just like you're normally supposed to be. I lay down and I turned the lights off. I closed my eyes and then I just waited. Falling asleep is a little like standing on the shores of a beach. The waves lapping at your feet until suddenly you're sinking beneath the wet surface. Well, I can tell you I was sinking. I was literally sinking. I didn't notice it until it was too late. I opened my eyes and felt panic. The walls of my comforter stretched high overhead. I was in a pit. It was like a dark hole, an abyss made from my own bed. I tried to sit up. I couldn't. I tried to grab the walls of fabric, but still I couldn't. I tried to scream. After my cries slithered up from my lips, I realized I was still sinking deeper and deeper and deeper. I wasn't able to stop it or slow my descent. The cloth walls continued to elongate, and soon the circles of darkness overhead was swallowed from sight. I was far, far down now. It was then that I began to feel something press against the walls of my sinking vessel. It felt like hands groping, grabbing, reaching, and poking. I battered them away, horrified and confused, another shriek finding my lips. I descended past the hands. They vanished like they had never been. I tried to roll over. I couldn't. I could only lie on my back and listen to the rustle of covers as they dipped and stretched, taking me down into whatever place this was. My heart was racing so fast, alarmingly fast. Next came the whispers. It sounded like there were people just on the other side of the fabric. They were conversing with one another in hushed tones, like they didn't want me to hear what they were saying. I'm not really like 100% on this, but I could have sworn I heard of them, at least one of them say my name. Then they were gone as well. Down, 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 my compressed hammock of madness, impossibility, continuing to elongate like a piece of warm taffy. I called for help. What the hell was I supposed to do? Of course, no one heard me because wherever I was, it wasn't just anywhere. I remember thinking at that exact moment that I was trapped in a nightmare. I tried to wake myself up. My arms were working, which was good. I pinched, I slapped, and even punched myself. I didn't even wake up, because I already seemed to be. I began to feel claustrophobic. The hot cotton wools pressed all around, and I felt myself break out in a sweat. The air was hot and heavy with darkness, as I think I started to cry. That's when I heard something above me, like something was crawling down towards me. Whatever it was, it scuttled like it had a dozen legs, all moving in one quick unison. It was getting closer. I could hear it getting closer. Shoving itself down after me for me, I could hear it breathing. Breathing. The ragged breaths came just as quickly as the other sounds. Something definitely said my name then. It was loud, clear, and it directed right at me. Except the voice came from below where my hole hadn't reached yet. The thing above me hurried faster, pressing itself through the small float of fabric. I waited for the inevitable hand at my throat, perhaps even claws. Maybe a sudden sliver of glistening teeth lunging for my throat. The voice below me spoke again. I screamed no. The scuttling ceased, and my prison continued to plummet. Let me out, I howled. Thrashing about, I was panicking. I knew I was panicking, but Jesus Christ, wouldn't you? Exhausted, trapped, and now sweating profusely, I sucked in thick lungfuls of hot air. I was crying. I felt like I was dying. I jerked my head to the left and then to the right. I needed something, anything. I needed hope. Something I was sorely lacking in a terrifying moment. There, what was that? It was a hole, just the tiniest of things. It was located where my left ear had been pressed against. Adjusting myself, a pitiful cry escaping, I pressed my eye to it. Out past to the itchy walls of my comforter. And what I saw had led me to write this. There were millions of us. The world was gone. There were no houses, no roads, no hills, nor mountains. There were no vehicles, no cars, no planes, no cities, no trees, and no taxes. An expanse of endless stars littered a vast eternity. But they didn't twinkle with that slightly off blue who, or you're used to seeing. These stars were purple and they moved. They zigzagged and crossed one another. They rose and then fell. They raced and then slowed. I felt my bladder release, and an unfortunate accident considering the circumstances on second thought when it was a good time to piss your pants. Regardless, I observed the purple stars with overwhelming shock. I noticed that whenever they changed directions, they did not so at a sharp 90-degree angle. That probably meant something. I mean, if any of this meant anything. I pulled my eyes away from the stars and focused on the other occupants of the sky. The millions like me, millions of blankets descending to forever space, dripping down and down through the cosmos like strands of multicolored drool from the mouth of the universe. All of us cocooned in our own blanket of choice, our vessels in this strange alien world. I cocked my eye down below, down to where we were all headed. If I had any more piss to offer, my blanket to have drunk it down once more. Sitting cross-legged on the depths of the eternal was an absolutely enormous entity. It was a really absolutely enormous entity. It was a humanoid, in shape, its colossal torso a pulsing mass of purple stardust. It glowed with an almost blinding radiance, and every shifting conglomeration of light pieced together by fragments, reaching the trillions in number. Rising from its back was a titanic construct that I can only describe as a tree. Its trunk emerged from the alien figure and soared high over its head. Its branches reaching and spreading to the very corners of existence. It appeared to be composed of the same strange purple stardust and an endlessly blinking buzz like neon fireflies. Hanging from the branches, like ornaments, were countless solar systems, pink, green, blue, black, gold, crimson. Every color I could think of. They swirled and spun and breathed and existed entirely in place. A buffet of spectacle like you've never seen before. I retraced my eyes back to the entity, back to its head. It was wrapped in black cloth layers, and these layers kept on going. Sliced along the mountains of fabric was a mouth that exhaled great gales of purple smog. Lazily drifted from teeth the size of the sun. If the sun had been diced up, the pieces gathered and then been slammed inside the mouth of the most terrifying creature I've ever imagined. The mouth was moving, and that was because the entity's two arms were moving. I followed the miles of stardust that composed the limbs all the way to the end, all the way to the hands, the fingers, and what the fingers were holding. I watched in absolute horror as the entity extended its arms and began to catch the dripping, hanging and descending blankets in the sky. Before I could utter some obvious statements of disbelief, shock, or confusion, I was suddenly jerked violently up. I screamed in surprise, but the sudden movement interrupted my long, steady descent. I gripped the sides of my blanket, and another pull gave me a whiplash. Something was bringing me up. It was something like pushing me. It was going back up. I had no clue what was going on. Something was taking me out of here. I spun around and cast one last look at the entity below. It was smiling at me. There was blood coming from its teeth, and all I could see was sharp teeth being beblooded. by people's blood and it just gazing at me. You see, as I drifted off to sleep, a massive spider had crawled onto my bed and down my throat. Realizing I wasn't breathing anymore, something needed for a living. Because at the end of the day, every person's dream can become out of anything. The moment I started thinking, I saw that entity. I looked in my room, but yet when I looked at my room, I saw this black figure standing there. It was coming towards me, slowly but steady. It got closer, and closer, and closer. I was laying in my bed and I had my covers over my head, trying to stay away from it and making sure I was safe. The moment I pulled my covers away from my face, I saw this black figure being so close to my face, and all I could hear and feel was his breath in my face. It was saying my name in the most dark way ever. I couldn't see, nor feel, nor think what I should have done. Also looking at the dark figure, and I was making sure that I was okay. Out of surprise, I screamed and a sudden movement interrupted my alarm. I was getting taken away from this dark place. It was smiling at me. But when I woke up, I was looking around and nothing actually was there. I went to look around even more and I checked my closet and everything, but yet I didn't find anything, not even any piece of cloth like the dark figure had. I think I saw millions of people dying in their sleep from one cause or another. I would say do yourself a favor. When you die, die violently.